Loneliness can show up when we're grieving for a variety of reasons. I think one of the main reasons for a lot of people that I've worked with is because nobody really feels like they're understood when they're lost in their grief. You know, you can be surrounded by people and be in a crowded room and feel completely alone and isolated. Sometimes people's support systems aren't close by. You know, they're only available by FaceTime. And that can make for long days and long nights. So there's often that feeling of loneliness when we're not close to the people that can support us. Sometimes people don't want the support, right? They're so destabilized by this significant loss that they kind of feel paralyzed, and being alone feels safer than being around other people because they can't always control their emotions, and then they worry about, judgment and burdening others. So, is there a right way to grieve or a wrong way to grieve? I think when we put our emotions and our feelings into silos of right and wrong, we deny the human capacity of our emotions. So our grief is unique to us because it's based on the personal relationship we had to the person that died. It's based on our personal value system, our personality, our cultural values and background. It's based on the way the person died, whether it was an expected death or a sudden and unexpected death. There's so many variables that there cannot be right and wrong in the situation of grief. So why might it be tricky to ask for help when you're grieving? Well, one of the big reasons is that grievers often feel that there is a stigma around weakness in showing their emotions and their vulnerabilities. It can be tricky because we may not feel confident that the people that we're with can actually hold the space for our big feelings. It also can feel tricky because we're so disoriented in grief. We've probably never experienced these enormous emotions before. And so it could simply be that we really don't know what we're feeling. So that sense of disorientation, doesn't allow us to really anchor into what's going on. And there's also people that, would crave privacy during times like this. And so they wouldn't be the ones that are reaching out for help. And that's okay too. So typically, the support system for a griever would be, family, friends, sometimes colleagues, if they're involved in a sport or a community of people like a church. Often those are the community people that support them. And for others, they may not have a community of people. They might be not connected to a support system, maybe because of geography, or maybe because they just don't have a large circle that surrounds them. So there's typically two groups of people that support the griever. There's listeners and there's doers. The listener shows up without a lot of expectation other than to validate, receive, and just provide company and personal space for the griever. They aren't afraid of their tears. They aren't afraid of the pain. They feel comfortable sitting and listening to someone. The doer is equally as important for the griever because the doer feels more comfortable being practical. And so doers tend to do the grocery shopping, take the dog for a walk, cut the grass, make the lists, do the administrative work, maybe that can be done by someone else, organize the rituals, organize a meal train, right? They're just as important as the listener, but they're very different. The different ways that hospice can support people that don't feel that they have a lot of support in their own personal lives or community are ways such as support groups. Most hospices run spousal loss or parental loss groups. We have wellness programs that provide, gentle touch, massage or aromatherapy, energy work. We typically have licensed professionals that provide one-on-one counseling, and then we also have a great assortment of bereavement volunteers that can also companion people on their grief journeys.
We also, at our hospice, as well as most other hospices, have wellness programs that can be very supportive for individuals who are struggling with grief at the moment. And wellness programs here at Dorothy Ley will look like group programming that would include mindfulness and meditation style programs in groups. We also have gentle stretch or yoga style programs. And then we also offer one-on-one complementary therapies to support you that might be very relaxing and non-invasive and really can hold you in your grief.
So when working with grievers, often in the early days of grief, we talk about our basic needs, making sure that we're eating, sleeping, drinking water, getting outside, the basic needs. And then we can get more specific of what each individual is going to need and what their self-care looks like. Is there self-care moving their body? Is there self-care being still? Is there self-care being with people? Or is there self-care being alone?
Self-care and grief are really important to each other. And self-care is going to be as unique to the person as their grief is going to be. For some people, self-care is going to look like a hot bath. And for other people, it's going to look like a marathon run. So I think that it's important to know what helps you feel nourished and supported. Typically, we want to make sure people are getting enough sleep, which is often really hard. But that's really, the physical pieces of grief, the sleep, staying hydrated, eating a little bit if possible. From the emotional perspective, finding someone to go for a walk with, getting into your garden, reading a good book if you can. And then, from a self-care perspective, self-compassion is always a great tool. Just being kind to yourself and accepting the fact that this is extremely hard and, not judging yourself for the feelings that you have.
So self-care practices when you're grieving are very individual to you. Just as your grief is yours and how you grieve is yours, so will your self-care practices be unique to you. And they'll vary from day to day. So what feels right for you today might not feel right for you tomorrow. It's about engaging in small bits of self-care that can support you on a daily basis. That might look like walking with a friend or talking to a friend. It might look like reading a book or listening to some music. It could be journaling or engaging in some creative outlet that's important to you. It might involve having a good night's sleep or watching a movie or perhaps preparing a nutritious meal for yourself. So there's a range of things that can support you with self-care.
I don't think that taking care of ourselves is going to alleviate our feelings of loneliness if that's how we're feeling. But how it aids in our grieving process is when we're able to take care of ourselves, even in small ways, it gives us a sense of some semblance of control and agency over our grieving process. And so if we can initiate some self-care practices, even if they're just small, it can help us feel like we've done something, right? That we've got something under control. But if we can't do that and we haven't been able to initiate any kind of self-care practices, that doesn't mean that you're failing at your grief. It just means that you're not ready yet. And maybe that's a good indicator that it's time to reach out for some support at a place like hospice, where we have people that can walk alongside you while you're trying to sort all this out. I'm not sure that words of encouragement are going to alleviate someone's loneliness or grief, but what I would want them to know is that I believe them. And I believe people when they tell me that this is the hardest thing that they've ever done. I believe them when they say they don't feel like they're going to survive this. I want to validate to them that it is as bad as they think it is. And they're not alone in that feeling. It's really a common and normal feeling that we get a lot of in hospice. I'd want them to know that if they feel like they haven't been able to find the support that they need, or they feel like there's something missing, or they're afraid for themselves, that there are places to call and there are organizations that can help. Some of the services that hospice offers people are loss groups, so spousal loss, parental loss, specified loss groups. We also have one-on-one counseling. We have wellness programs. We have yearly events like Evening of Remembrance or the Darkest Night during the winter. And the way you would access it is by searching the local hospice in your area in Etobicoke here, West Toronto, and East Mississauga. That's the catchment for Dorothy Ley Hospice. And so if you're within this catchment, going online and looking up our programs, and there's ways to self-refer. You don't need a doctor's referral. You can just click the button and take it from there.